Hi, welcome to the WeShape podcast. I'm Katie. I'm here with Nina, and Tyler is out today. We're going to do a little bit of a girls' club today. We've invited a very special guest, one of the WeShape coaches, Kayson. Welcome,
Hi,
Kayson.
Thank you.
I was talking with Nina and Tyler, and I said, we need to have guests. We need to deepen this conversation, get different perspectives, and I immediately thought of you.
Oh.
You've been with the company now for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
You were with the company prior to our transition into more of this mission to kind of expose and break down toxic weight loss culture. I mean, to put it bluntly, you were with the company when we were, in a way, part of the toxic weight loss culture and weight loss. And so you have a really unique perspective on just the transition for us all. And you've talked with so many of our community members. So I know that you hold kind of a interesting perspective in your mind just about the things that you, I'm sure, hear all the time. So welcome. We're excited just to have a conversation and just better understand some of these topics and how they impact our community. So welcome.
Yay. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
We're really excited.
It's
So
gonna be fun.
how's everyone's week so far?
It has been good. My son, who is a toddler, is refusing to nap. So
Oh, that's fun.
I've been frequently telling my friends and family that things are rough in Toddler Town because our mayor is just going crazy.
Yeah.
Having a tough go.
Yeah, isn't it wild? Just like I was talking with my friend this morning just about all the stuff we have going on with work and this and that, and then I'm like, and parenting is the wildest of it all.
Oh my gosh.
It's just crazy.
Mm-hmm. My son's getting such an attitude too, and I don't know where it's coming from. Like, I was telling him something the other day, and he just looks at me and he goes, "Mommy, calm down." And I was like, "Excuse me." What?
Yeah, the things that they say to you, you're like, you heard
telling
that
a
from
woman
me."
to calm down has 0 times
Yeah.
ever worked, by the way, in case anyone's wondering about that.
Yeah. How was your week, Nina?
It's been tough. My husband, as you know, is recovering from probably the most significant case of poison oak I've ever seen anyone have. So he's kind of been like a mummy, just like wrapped up in bed, being miserable. So Mercury's in retrograde, as you mentioned. So just that is what's happening.
I'm always like, I don't believe that, and then it happens. I'm like, I totally believe this. Like, what? It's weird. It's like I don't know if it's just a belief of convenience, but like even this week, our internet's down here at the office. We like can't get it fixed. Multiple people have come out. The door locks broke. Like
We couldn't get into the office.
no, we couldn't get in.
The light in the elevator is broken.
Yeah, it's like
So scary.
what is? I know you. The elevator rides are pitch black.
I kind of like it, though. It reminds me of Disneyland, that one ride.
Okay, but in that one ride, the elevator falls.
Ooh, true story, true story.
And also, like, for people, like, Kayson came in today and she was like, didn't know that was going to happen. And so then she pushed the button and was, like, in pitch black. So it's a little startling.
You
I should have
find
warned
out
you.
too late. Like,
Yeah.
the door has closed. And
Yeah,
you're
it's-
going up.
Yeah.
very-
No,
very
at one
scary.
point, I'm like, do I need to find my phone so that way I can have a flashlight in here?
Emergency.
Anyway. Well, let's dive in a little bit. I want to, one of the things that's been on my mind is, I think in the first episode I talked a little bit about just sitting with this idea around our mission and sort of the time that I sat on that and why we needed to go in that direction. And I remember feeling pretty nervous to talk with our team about it, saying like, this is where I really feel called to go. And it's really aligned with our product, but I'm really hoping that people can get on board with this. And I remember we did a company meeting one time and I said, you guys, I have been sitting on this for a while and I really want to take the company in this direction. And I hope you guys can see why bringing awareness to toxic body image or toxic weight loss culture is so important and it can benefit our community so much. And I will never forget that Kayson sent me like the sweetest message after that meeting, just saying like, thank you so much. This is, people in our community are really going to benefit from this. Like, you had your own experience with a family member working in a weight loss company and how like toxic it was. And so thank you for sending that to me because it is always like really, you're very vulnerable when you're kind of like feeling called to lead something in a certain way. And you don't really have any other inclination other than your intuition to go with it, right? It's like I can't make a data-driven decision based on that idea. I was just like, I know I need to go in this direction. So I don't know what came up for you that day when I said, hey, we gotta take this company to the next level. We gotta deepen our mission and bring more awareness to toxic weight loss culture. What came up for you that day?
I remember that so clearly because it was one of those moments where it felt like there was like the choir singing and like the lights, and I was just like so grateful that like this is the direction that like you're being called to and our company is being called to, because it really isn't talked about. And I have had some like very personal experiences with like toxic weight loss culture industry. And so just hearing that that was going to be the forefront of our company and something that we're really going to be moving forward towards, it was one of those moments where I just felt like so seen, and like it was really one of those times where I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Like this is it. Like I know we've been moving towards this, but just hearing it spoken out into the world and like having a lot of intention behind it was incredible, and just so important to like me personally, because I just so believe in it. And it's one of those things where I've always say like, oh, I don't have bad days at work anymore because I love my job. But it's one of those times where I was like, now that's just like totally elevated and I just love it even more. But yeah, it really meant a lot to me, because my mom worked for a very popular weight loss company. Disclaimer, she told me I could talk about that. Hi, Mom.
What's your mom's name?
My mom's name is Lori.
Hi, Lori.
She's the best.
How long did she work for the company?
She worked there for probably like 10 years.
That's a good amount of time.
And it was when I was like exiting middle school and throughout high school. So like very like formative years for me personally.
What are some of the, tell us what are some of the things that you remember from her being there while you were a teenage girl growing up in this society?
Well, my mom lost like 80 pounds.
Wow.
In, I want to say like a relatively short period of time. And it was great in the beginning because she was like, wow, look at me. Like I did it. Incredible. But it very quickly became consuming. Like she would weigh herself like once in the morning, once at night, and like was so nitpicky about every single thing that she ate, and like was constantly just like criticizing her body. And the job position was also very critical. Like they had very specific rules about once you join the company to work for it, you had to maintain a certain weight.
Okay, Kayson.
Oh my God.
Kayson.
I know.
That is not true.
Should be against the law.
No, it is. It 100% is. Like she would have a goal weight, and if she went like too far over it, I want to say like 5 pounds, she would have like a certain period of time where she would need to get back to her goal weight, or she was like put on a restriction, or like her job would
you could
be
eat a burrito
Horrified.
and be out of your goal.
Exactly.
I don't have.
It was very, very difficult and stressful, and
you could retain 10 pounds of water. Like,
yeah.
What kind of rule is that?
I know.
That's so frightening.
I think that was one of the first times I ever like saw toxic weight loss culture.
Did you know? But I mean, in that moment so clearly, see, this is what's interesting about beliefs, right? Is like, you can have a feeling like, but if everyone around you is like, this is what we're doing, then you go, this is what we do. This is okay. And so, like, was that the consensus at the time? This is okay?
Yeah, it was expected and like encouraged, especially because like people were constantly being like, wow, you look great, amazing, wonderful, fantastic.
She may have
incredible.
even thought it was like accountability.
Yeah, and that's essentially what it was. They're like framing it as like accountability, like we're doing this for you.
We're helping you. So did she join that company, lose the weight while she was in the company, and then was she, I mean, here's the other thing about rapid weight loss is that it's not a lifestyle change, first of all. And so I don't know. There's so many layers to like the different levels of toxicity around this like rapid weight loss, like, you know, forgetting the whole nutrient. Like I don't even fully understand it myself. But so that for the full 10 years she was working there, she was really being stringent around that 5-pound increase.
Yeah. It may not exactly have been 5 pounds, but it definitely was like a small window where like naturally your body is supposed to fluctuate a little bit because that's
Bodies are not stagnant.
Because that's how the human body works. And yeah, it was very, very like micromanaged and like.
And what if you gained muscle?
Didn't matter. So it was, I think that was the first time that I actually like saw it happening in real time and was like, oh, I don't think that's supposed to be the way it is. Because also she was so stressed all the time and she was like miserable. And so it was really heartbreaking to see because she lost all this weight and she should hypothetically have felt great and happy and amazing, but like she didn't. And it, if anything, it just like made her even more self-conscious because not only is she like under such heavy scrutiny from the company, but it's like she put all that pressure on herself as well. And so being like a teenager at that time, just sitting back and watching someone I love so dearly like really struggle to love and accept themselves was so eye-opening to me, because then I noticed like myself doing those things and like really scrutinizing myself, and it got to a point where I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't like that. And
yeah, I was going to say, as a teenage girl, I mean, is it even possible for you not to absorb some of that?
I don't think so.
I don't think.
Well, because if you're not getting it from home, you're getting it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
That's just.
And disclaimer, I do really believe that our parents really were doing the best that they know how to do given the circumstances. And like, even within the last couple of years, like Nina and I were doing a bunch of like terrible fad diets. So this is like not something that's just like, and I say this every episode, this is not about we've overcome this, here we are. This is about like, help us break this down. This feels bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like even before she started working from this company, like I know that like her mother passed things down to her, which got from her mother. And I'm sure it like goes on and on like that, because you can't break a cycle until you realize that you're in a cycle. Yeah. And I think that was like, my mom hasn't worked for this company. It's probably been about 10 years since she's worked for it since. But even still, like she struggles with like food and will like look at foods and be like, oh, I can't eat that. That's so bad. Like that's such a bad food. And I'm constantly trying to gently remind her and be like, Mom, there's no such thing as good food or bad food. There's just food.
But like, talking about breaking a cycle, for her to be working in a company that held her accountable for her weight, a number on the scale, all the way to you being in a company that's breaking down toxic weight loss culture. So just want to sit in the celebration,
the choir and the lights.
of that. And it does really take one person at a time. And I think that we just, you know, even last night, my daughter has to read for 10 minutes a night for school, and she picked this book off the shelf, and it says Bodies Are Cool. And it talks about like, every type of body that you could imagine it talks about. And one of the pages, all the people are in bathing suits, like at the pool, and there's like all different kinds of bathing suits. And she pointed to one of the bodies and she was like, oh, like, do you have those stretch marks like that? And I said, I do. And she's like, oh, and your stomach kind of folds over right there like that? And I said, it does. And she sat with it for a moment. I watched her just pause. And then she went, that's pretty cool, Mom. And I was like, it's working. We can do it. It was like, because I feel bad that like the first part of her life, I was still in the thick of the toxic weight loss culture. I mean, even last week I was talking about how I was panicking that I was putting on muscle, and like, even if I was putting on fat, like it shouldn't matter. Like my hormones are going to shift. Things are going to change in my body. That's okay. And so even, you know, it's like, I want to be like, I'm through that. And it's like every day I'm just like punched in the face. It's like, no, you're not. That's a belief you're still carrying. So but just wild that it has gone from that all the way to you part of this community and part of this effort and mission.
I definitely think it's one of those things where you have to actively choose to break down those ideas and beliefs, because I think that they are so deeply ingrained, like, in our culture, in us as women, and I'm sure so many other people struggle with that as well. It's so ingrained to, like, heavily criticize yourself and like scrutinize everything that you do, and like every time your body changes, and it's I don't think it's the type of thing where you naturally will start talking to yourself with that kindness if you don't actively
You have to wake up.
do it.
You have to
every
to
day.
wake up and just admit that you were asleep at the wheel.
Mhm.
I think that's the other part that's really complicated, is that breaking down the cycles and bringing awareness to it require that you admit that you were a part of it.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of shame in that, right? And so, like, it was hard for me to come on here and be like, Nina and I did these terrible diets
my
together. Like, because I worry, like, even it's like I can look back and see how I was asleep at the wheel, right? And then it makes me go, well, where am I still asleep, right? So just, I think, like you said, like, giving yourself kindness through that process, and that it's okay to admit that we were a part of that, and that we're trying to figure out a way that better serves us, that's healthier for us and for the people around us. So it's a journey. So, I mean, I feel like your mom being in that company and having those insane parameters put upon her could have gone many, 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 many ways. So it sounds like it was maybe probably impossible for you not to absorb some of that. But then it sounds like you came to a point where you said, I don't think so.
Mhm.
And so, like, I mean, that's amazing in itself, right? That you could just pause in that. And so, like, can you walk us through that a little bit? Do you remember any of those times where you were like, I see her suffering in this and I'm not going to do that? Or
I think the thing that really was kind of like the light bulb turning on is I'm very close with my mom. I love her so much. She's definitely one of my top favorite people in the world, and it hurt me to hear and see her speak so negatively about herself, because I'm over here and I was like, I love you. How dare you speak about my mom like that? That's horrible. And she used to have this side-by-side photo that she cut out and put on a piece of cardboard paper that was her before and after picture. And the before picture was a picture of her at a family member's wedding. She looked beautiful. She's in this gorgeous dress. And then the after is a picture where she also looks beautiful, and she's like, it's post weight loss, so she's a little bit smaller. But I would look at these photos and be like, I don't understand why are you so upset with the first one? And she'd be like, oh, I don't even want to look at it. Like, let me cover it up. Like, I hate it. And it was just it really hurt me to see her be so unkind to herself, because I'm like, why? You're such an amazing person. You're so beautiful. I love you so much. Like, why are you being so mean? And then I just thought about, like, well, I'm also, like, not the nicest to myself, and I'm sure that there's someone out there who loves me so dearly that if they heard me speaking this way, they would be like, why are you saying this about yourself? Like, I love you so much. Like, why would you be so mean? And then I think I just realized that it's like, oh, I'm sure there is someone out there, but, like, that can also be me. Like, I can also love myself enough to not constantly berate myself with, I could look like this, or I could do this, or my mom said that if I, like, lose 50 pounds, she'll take me to get my belly button pierced. Like,
Was that an actual thing?
That was an actual thing.
Oh.
And what was your reply to that when she said that?
I was like, okay. But then it never happened, because I was like,
I'd just rather be happy.
I would just rather be happy.
Yeah. I mean, I also think about it, like, maybe this is, I don't know. I think about, I always have thought about, if you wake up in the morning and let's say you have 100 units of energy, you have 100 in your bank, and you're living in that particular scenario, how many of the units are given to that?
Probably so many.
And, like, I think I rather give those units to doing this podcast, hanging out with a friend, working on our business that's driving a mission, being with my children. Like, it's wild to think about it even from like a logistical perspective like that, because it's so time consuming. And time is a resource that there's not infinite time, like, as a human being. And so it is sad to think that the societal construct that set this up for us is pushing us in the direction where we give so much of our energy and time to something like that, instead of things that could actually bring going on a hike, being in nature, connecting with, I could list a million things that would bring so much more. It's like we think that this input of being this weight and working for this company and doing this thing will equal this thing. And I think maybe we're here to say that it doesn't equal that thing, and that your value and your happiness is absolutely not determined by a number on a scale, but we've been kind of tricked to believe that it is, right? And so, yeah, it's sad to think about it in those ways, and it's sad just to know that your mom had to go through that, honestly.
And I think maybe it would have been different if it would have been the type of thing where she actually was happy and it did like improve her quality of life, but just seeing how it essentially went the opposite way, and just, I will sometimes say that she has like PTSD from it, like even now, because she'll see people who she used to work with, and she'll say like, oh, I don't want them to see me because I've gained so much weight. And I'm like, Mom, they're not going to notice that. They're going to be happy to see you because they care about you.
Yeah.
And they're not going to be looking at it and be like, oh, looks like she's gained weight. Like that's not what people who care about you think about. And it's like I have to remind her of those things, because she's just been so conditioned for so many years to think that like that is the thing that people notice and care about, is what her body looks like. It's like, that's not. People care about your heart. They care about who you are. And that's what made you so,
like, people
important.
remember how you treat them, not how you look to them.
Exactly.
And I think that this is what we've talked about in the last number of episodes, is just the intentionality behind why we're doing something. I'm excited. Next week we're going to have a nutritionist on. We're going to talk a little bit more about is there a time and place for weight loss? Like, I'm even confused by that myself. Like, is there a time and place for this? And where does intentionality play a role, right? Because if your mom's intention was to be a number and to calorie restrict or however she got there, that is going to probably, in my opinion, produce a very different outcome than, I'm really excited to eat this meal that I put my heart into, where I went to the local farmer's market and got these nutrients. It's like, and then I'm super excited to do this, workout program because I feel like I have so much less pain in my body, and I'm more, I sleep better, and I just feel like more strong. Like, those are, it's almost like you could almost have maybe even similar, I don't know if you could even have similar methodologies, but different intentions, and then have such different outcomes, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think the big thing for me, at least personally, is making that shift of being like, going from, oh, I want to work out because I should, and I should work out because that's going to help me look better, to then switching and going the totally opposite direction and being like, I actually want to work out because I know that like it feels good when my body moves. And it's like, I'm not trying to change my body, but I just want to feel good.
Yeah.
It was a huge difference. And it really changes the perspective of how you look at yourself and essentially how you treat yourself going forward. Because I know that we've talked a little bit about how like there can be some views around like movement where it like feels like a punishment, and
exercise
like,
as a punishment.
Yeah, and it's like it doesn't have to be, but I think that there's so much pressure on it because so many people will tell you that you need to exercise only to lose weight. Like that's it. There's like, that's the end goal.
And that you have to do this. It's like the one size fits all for me. I could not be more irritated with that. Like, most of the time I will do some strength training, but some weeks, like tomorrow, I even canceled my workout tomorrow because I'm like, I can tell my body's not in a space for that right now. Maybe I'll do something, but like this whole, like you have to do this map of, it's like, well, maybe what works for you doesn't work for me. And maybe this week I'm doing yoga and next week it's like, maybe we just get to decide for ourselves and stop projecting on other people what feels good for them. Only you can really determine what feels good inside of your body. And I think it's insane that we really rely on particular standards, or everyone should be doing this type of exercise program, or everyone should be falling into this diet. It's like, that doesn't even really make sense when you think about it.
Well, because also when you do that, a majority of the time, it just produces so much shame if it doesn't work.
Which is, it doesn't work. So it really does just produce a bunch of shame. It's like, again, I just think the intention behind why we're doing something is so critical. And then it's so funny because I know a lot of people in our community, and I'd love to talk about this more because you talk to so many of our members, or like always talking about, how do I get motivated? And I really am coming to believe that the intentionality, again, behind why you're doing something doesn't necessarily even, there doesn't even really need to be necessarily motivation, right? I've noticed that once I started shifting my intention around, oh my gosh, my back feels better when I go to that yoga class once a week, and I feel stronger and less winded when I'm like running around with my kids if I'm doing a little bit of strength training, and I'm focusing on those things, it doesn't feel like I have to motivate myself. It just kind of feels like I want to do that because my intention feels more aligned.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think one of the biggest things that I've noticed with talking to people in our community, because like you said, I do talk to a lot of people, and I love talking to all of them. But I've noticed that one of the threads that kind of goes through so many of these conversations is the idea of like, am I doing enough? Like, I feel like people will reach out to me expecting me to tell them to do more, or if they will come and they'll be like, I only did one workout this week, expecting me to be like, oh no, like how could you? But
That's what they're used to.
Yeah, because that's what they're used to. But I think it always takes them back a little bit, where I'm like, that's okay. Like if you're trying, then you're doing, and what you're doing is enough. And I feel like they always expect me to have a but at the end of that, and they're like, but you could be doing this, and it's like, nope, that's a full sentence. Like, you're doing enough, period.
And it does that sentence that you just said around like, I didn't do enough, or looking to you to see if they did enough, just highlights the construct that we're a part of, which is, do not check in with yourself to see what you need and what your body requires or what feels good for you. It's make sure you look outside of yourself to make sure you're adhering to a particular standard and get that validation from somebody else. And I would love, for myself included, for our company to push this movement through to say, it's really nobody's business what feels good for me. Thank you very much. Like, politely have a nice day. Because no one
respectfully.
I was about to say a bunch of other really mean things there, and I was like, no, let's be kind.
Get the bleep button ready, guys.
Yeah. But do you know what I mean? Like, kind of fuck off to everybody a little bit. Like, nobody gets to know what feels good for me. And so I my heart goes out, because I still struggle with that myself. Like, is this enough? You know, and so my heart goes out to everybody who feels like what they're doing is not enough. And I'm sorry that our society has made anyone believe that that's the truth. Because the reality is that I believe everyone should be checking in with themselves and letting their internal voice be the driver for the decisions, not the external societal values that we've set up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, tell me more about, like, do you have any particular, I don't know if you do have any particular, like, I don't know, stories about people in our community, or anything, like any other common threads that you see where you're just like feeling like, oh no, like, you know, I'm sorry that society has done this to you.
I definitely think one of the other main threads that I probably talk about it almost every single day is trying to combat the negative self-talk that lives inside of people's heads. Like, I can't I can't tell you how many times I have used the example of listening to someone, because anytime I talk to someone, I always want to hear everything they have to say, whether I agree with it or not. So if they are telling me how they feel so bad and they didn't do their workout and they're just the worst and all these things, I'll just kind of let them go with that, and then at the end I'll stop and I'll say, okay, for example, let's say you're talking to your best friend. Your best friend just said all of these things to you. Would you look at them and go, yep, you're right, you're the worst?
Why do we do that to ourselves?
You literally just wouldn't have any friends.
Yeah.
Like, period.
And so I always tell people, I'm like, would you, if someone you love came to you and said all of these things, what would you say to them? And almost every single time they'll go, oh, well, I would tell them that that's not true and that they are enough and that they do deserve love and kindness. And I'm like, okay, you need to say that in the mirror. Like, you deserve love and kindness and to feel happy in your body. And all of this negative talk that you're saying to yourself, like, you do not deserve that. And it's unjustified, and stop it.
And I think that the truth too is that a number on a scale or a standard that is set by a collective whole, generations before us, you reaching that or trying to reach that is not going to make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is, I just think if you can't be happy with exactly how you are today, it's just reaching for that thing is not going to do that. I think that's the story over and over and over again.
Well, because it's never enough.
Yeah.
Like, there's always more that people tell you that you should be doing.
Yeah.
Like, if you're like moving your body 4 days a week, you should be doing 5.
Yeah.
If you're moving your body 5 days a week, well, you should be doing 6. Like, it's never enough until you get to a point where you're like, okay, it's enough. Like, I can't. And then at that point, you either are just burnt out and physically can't do it anymore and are just grappling with all these things in your brain, or you go the other direction and you're like, I'm done with this. Like, I'm not going to adhere to these standards anymore because they're inachievable. And
I mean, the standard right now is slim thick. Like, that's the trend for bodies right now.
You know what my favorite thing about Nina is that the level of education I get with you about, like, modern cultural, like, I'm like, tell me what's going on, because I don't know any of these things.
Hot takes with
Okay,
Nina.
yeah, what is it called again?
Slim thick is the aesthetic that's in right now. You know, when we grew up in the 90s, like, it was like Monicon Friends, like, your arm had to look like a spaghetti noodle. Like, that's what I wanted to grow up and look like. And now it's slim thick, which is like, you've got really big boobs, you've got a really big butt, but, like, you have a thigh gap. And you have a tiny waist in your ab show. And I'm like, so, question mark, when I am fuller in my bust or bottom, I generally am fuller also in my thighs and my waist. And in order to achieve that, you literally need surgery, unless you're just genetically gifted and, like, God bless you, and I don't want you to feel bad about your body either.
Let's not even call that a genetic gift, because that's just
thank you, I appreciate that call out.
That's just contributing to the bullshit.
But again, like, if someone is born and looks a certain way, like, I'm happy for them, that's their experience. But it's a pretty impossible aesthetic to achieve, because again, even if you're working out all the time, blah blah, and you get thinner and you're trying to achieve that, it's pretty also hard to then have body fat deposits in the places you want them. So, like, again, this is just kind of like diametrically opposed. Like, you can't actually have both those things.
Well, it was like when we were talking earlier today about how, like, historically really curvy was, like, really in, and then it went all the way to the other side, and it was super. And I'm like, can we just have, okay, we've gone all these directions and no one's really been that happy. So is there a way that we can just wake up and say that all the types are great? Like, do we have to pick?
I don't want to choose, yeah.
Yeah, it's like, can we just decide? That's the other thing, is, like, I don't really know where to, like, land my feet in, because I also don't want, if somebody wants to achieve a specific aesthetic and that feels happy to them, I don't want to question their intention or their motivation. Maybe that really, so it's like, I want to just create a landing pad for safety and acceptance of everyone, while also bringing to light that you don't have to look a certain way to cultivate happiness and meaning for your own life, and that it's important to check in with your intentions. And outside of that, I just want to create a landing space for everybody. You know what I mean? It's like we don't have to pick one or the other. We could actually just be inviting of it all. So it is complicated. I don't know how black and white it is in terms of like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, the body neutrality movement is something that I've been really fascinated by recently, because I think body positivity is incredible. But body positivity can be challenging for certain people because of their own relationship with their body, which, as we know, is really, really complicated. And you're not going to be able to tell someone else how they should feel about their body. But one of the things I like about the body neutrality movement is that, like, it's about accepting your body. I mean, like, maybe for you, some days you do wake up and you love your body and like you're like loving your stretch marks and your wrinkles and your freckles and all those things, and maybe some days you're not as much, but you still can accept and respect your body and practice that like self-esteem of like, my body does amazing things for me. It like lets me like hug my friends and talk to people I care about and like do all these amazing things. Like, my body does so much cool stuff if I really check in with that. It's not about how it looks. It doesn't have to be about how it looks.
Maybe one day I'll read the book Bodies Are Cool.
You should.
I feel like
we should
adults
just do a
should
read
have
aloud.
that book. No,
Yeah.
it's really just highlighting that in this children's book. It's like, I love reading it too because I'm like, bodies are cool. Like, we don't need to.
They're amazing.
When somebody comes in and says that I have to look this way for this reason, we need to pause and just understand that was something that was constructed. That's not actual truth. That was something that was told to us that doesn't have to be our truth. So I think it's just about acknowledging that and then having mindfulness around, we get to kind of create our own truth. And I'm a believer in connect to a truth that serves you, right? So the truth of somebody else, like the standard, for instance, of a certain image. What was the name you called?
Oh, slim, thick.
Like that.
With 2 C's.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, I love you. So like that might not resonate as my truth, and that's okay because that doesn't serve me. And so just being able to accept and find, and that's the other thing as women, I think it's really sad how like, I feel like women need to actually come together in this rather than, I think that the other shitty thing about this is that these standards and expectations have actually like drawn divisions between and judgment and projections and competition. And I'm like, oh my gosh, can we just not do that? Women already have to kind of suffer enough with so many other uphill battles. Can we just come together with each other and celebrate each other's truth? This might be what works for me and the thing that I want for my body. This might be the thing for you. This might be the thing for you. And can we just offer each other like acceptance and love in that? Do we really have to go down the road of like, well, that's not the standard I adhere to? So it's like, it's wild to me, even just not only do we do it to ourselves, but I see women who there's judgment. And I just would love to remove that and just.
Well, there's no winning at that game, right?
There's
I mean, you see the
no
models in
winning.
the magazines and they're like, they're too thin. And you see the women who are more full figure, they're too big. It's like, okay, so where do we get to just be okay? There's no winning.
Yeah. It feels like a very scary time to be raising young children.
I think the beautiful thing, though, which both of you have highlighted, is like, you know, your relationship with your mom and what she went through with the company she was working for. You made a really, really big difference in the next choices that you made, like after that experience. And I think we're all a product of that to some degree. Like, I do believe that this isn't something we have solved right now, but it's something I think is being solved slowly over time, because generationally, like I think about my mom and like, you know, God bless my grandma, but she said some horrible things to my mother growing up. Like,
Because it was okay.
you'd be pretty if you weren't so fat. Like, straight up just said those actual words. Like, my mom's never said that to me and would never say that to me. And she has her struggles with her body today still, but like it intrinsically believes that like I would be more valuable if I were thinner. And she didn't raise me to believe those things, and like the value wasn't placed on my body and what it looked like. It was more about what it could do and like, you know, if I wanted to play sports or whatever. But like the point being though is that like I'm one generation step away from that, and we're all one generation step away from that. And then like you both have children. I don't have children, but like you guys are raising little people to have a different experience with their body. And like that's just, we're gonna get a little bit farther away each time. And like as you said, we don't have to continue participating. That's the hope. That's the little granule
Yeah,
here.
it's funny because like even my mom, when she was in high school, by society standards, she was overweight, and she was bullied a lot for that. And so like targeted and bullied like pretty bad.
Yeah.
And I could see as she got older, she had an interesting I'd love to talk with her more about this if she would, but she lost a lot of weight, and like all of a sudden her metabolism kind of changed, and then she kind of naturally leaned more towards being a slimmer figure. And I could tell that in a way she felt like haha to those people. And I'm like, oh, like that to me even in itself is like a false sense of happiness, right? And then I say that because even though she gave them the thing that they were making, that she kind of like stuck it to them in a way, there was another side of it where I would watch her comment on her weight all the time, and she was like kind of underweight in my opinion. I mean, I probably shouldn't even say that, but I could just tell that like I'm like you know, as your parents get older, you're like, I want my mom to be strong, and like I'm like, she was very thin, and she would be making comments on her weight to the point where I had to go to my mom and say, listen, I know you have struggles with whatever in your own body, but like I absolutely cannot have you talking about your weight in front of my children. It's not okay. And I could tell she couldn't even quite understand, and maybe it's because in her mind this is the gold standard that she was reaching, and so like I've met the goal, so like why aren't we on the same page with this? And it just like really is sad to me that there's a lot of noises happening. What is that?
Just someone with a sledgehammer on the roof, probably. God knows. We work downtown, so things
Wild.
get crazy.
Anyway, so it's like, you know, I watched her in a way get thinner over the years and like kind of fake feel good about herself. I don't know if that makes sense, but then also she, you know, wasn't feeling great in her body. So I'm like, the thinness does not equal the happiness. And then like I really did have to kindly tell her, please, you know, your relationship to your body is yours, and I'm not here to dictate that, but I do need to set a boundary and say, when you're around my kids, you can't talk about your weight, because it's just how confusing for them to see this very small, thin woman complaining about how she gained 2 pounds. Like I'm not available for it. And then at least I feel grateful for myself to be able to see that her going through that journey in her life, even though she got what she thought she wanted, didn't make her body necessarily feel good. And it didn't really make her emotional state feel good. So I think it's just another example of, we think that this plus this equals value, equals happiness, equals worth. And I think that there's probably countless stories about how that's absolutely not true, and how if we could come to the table with a little bit of awareness that my intention and my desire to feel a certain way in my body is mine, and I'm going to dictate that. And I know that that is a really tough battle. I feel it in myself, fighting that like pressure coming in. I've said this every episode. I've been unfollowing certain people on Instagram just because I just want my mind to be filled with different things. My algorithm is so confused. It's like, you know how it only shows you like a certain percentage of like the number of people that you follow. So if you follow like 1,000 people, maybe it only shows you like 100. It's like every day it's like a new batch, and they're like, what about these people? I'm like, oh no, unfollow. Oh no, unfollow. Because I can't do it anymore.
What about this?
Yeah.
Your targeted ads must be a mess.
They're a mess. I'm really sorry about that.
Those poor media buyers.
Yeah. But yeah, I think all we can do is talk about it, take the shame out of it. You know, this is not about harping on our mothers. They were doing the best that they knew how to do with exactly what was put in front of them, right? So we are thankfully being shown maybe a different way that feels like will serve us and future generations in a different way, hopefully for the better. So it's actually about offering them like, oh, I'm so sorry that you were in a time where that was the only way. And how grateful are we that we are in a time where the door has cracked open to a different way. Like, thank God for that.
Yeah, that makes me so grateful for like kids who are growing up and will like hopefully have these expectations removed that they should look a certain way. Like I have a cousin who's 11, and I have very intentionally never commented on her body ever. Like I will never look at her and go, wow, like you look so pretty today. I'm always like, wow, you're so smart. Like you're so kind. Like you're such a kind person, and you're so loving. Like I very intentionally try to not pull any type of scrutiny positive or negative, because it's like, I know that, like, I just think about when people would comment on my mom's body and they'd be like, wow, you look amazing, like so beautiful. But like, I knew that she was miserable, and it just is like a positive, or I don't know if it's positive or negative reinforcement, but like, if people keep commenting on your body when you, like, let's say for example, when you lose a lot of weight and people start commenting on your body, it just reinforces that, like, oh,
it's a positive
I
reinforcement for the toxic behavior.
Yeah. And it
has
kind of
negative
creates
results.
this mindset of like, oh, well, now people are telling me that I look great, and they weren't telling me that before, so I have to keep this in order to keep feeling and looking great. But behind the scenes, you're like, I feel miserable, I'm really sad.
And I mean, I think, tell me if you think this happens, because I think this happens, where you don't even realize that you're miserable.
Mm-hmm.
You're holding it all together through this, like, I'm holding the pieces together like a facade, because society tells me, be this way, look this way, have this body image. Okay, I'm doing it this way. It's almost like you're tricking yourself into believing you're happy. But I think when we pause and step back and go, where does all my energy go? Where are most of my thoughts going?
Mm-hmm.
Where does my action go? And then you're like, wait, all my thoughts are obsessing about the scale. All of my action is going towards taking steps to make sure I look. Is that real? I mean, is that really making you happy? Does that bring you connection? And you know, I feel like where did I hear this? They were doing studies on people who were on their deathbed, and they were like, okay, tell me what your biggest life regrets are. And everyone said the same thing. I always find that kind of research fascinating, when there's like no connection with the people, but everyone's saying the same thing. It was never about how they looked. It was never about how much money they had. It was never about the house they had, the car they drove. It was literally like, my biggest life regrets are that I did not have more connection with other. Connection with other does not mean you meet a number on a scale. Connection with other does not mean you look a certain way. It has nothing to do with that. And so I always find that kind of stuff really fascinating, that if we get to push fast, like if we could all spend an hour in our final moments, like have that mindset, how much different would our actions be today? Would we be spending time counting calories on the scale, watching this, doing that?
Hell fucking no.
No.
Hell fucking no.
I might still exercise because it makes me feel good, and it'll make me feel good in my body and give me more energy. But that is, like, again, that is such a different intention than I'm doing this to look this way. And so, I don't know. It fascinates me. If you could, I don't know, Kayson, I'm curious. If you could, you know, you've been talking to our members every day for the last 4 years. If you could say one thing to them, what would you say? You can take a minute here if you want. Just something that you feel like you wish you could just.
I think the thing that I would want to tell them the most is, like, you are worthy of love and kindness right now, as you are right now in this moment, not when you've lost 10 pounds, not when you reach a certain dress or pant size. Like, you are worthy of love and kindness right now in this moment, and your body has brought you to this moment, and it deserves to be treated with kindness. Because I think there is such an idea of, like, oh, I will celebrate my body when I, like, get to this goal weight. That's when I'll be able to celebrate my body. And it's like, that doesn't have to be true. Like, I know personally, one of the best things I have ever done for myself in my entire life was decide to love myself. Like, that has been, and I've, like, slowly started to see that resonate in various aspects of my life. Like, I recently got a large tattoo on my arm, and I always told myself,
amazing, by the way.
Thank you. I always told myself, like, oh, when my arms are a little bit smaller, then I'll go get that tattoo, because if it's smaller, it'll look better, and that's how I will reward myself with, like, losing this amount of weight. And it got to a point where I was like, I don't have to do that. Go get the tattoo now if you want to. Get the crop top if that's what you're into. also recently got my first crop top,
Woohoo!
which is never something I thought I would do, but
Let's
it
do
was
it.
amazing.
It's a crop top summer.
But yeah, I would say as you are right now is perfect and worthy of love. And if you do lose weight, amazing. That version of you also deserves love and kindness. If you gain weight, fine. Show yourself that love and kindness then too. Like, don't wait to be a certain size, because it's just, there's always going to be something that tells you like, oh, wait a little bit longer, like go a little bit farther and then show yourself that love and kindness, or do a little bit more and then you can accept yourself. It's like, just put that pressure out of your head, and if you can, just love yourself as you are. Like I do this practice where anytime I find myself like thinking something negative, I will intentionally stop and think of 3 positive things to counterbalance it, and it has done remarkable things. Like it's really, really helped me and made me happier in my life. And I think that is my hope for people, is to try to help them get to that point as well, because like self-love is so incredible when you embrace it.
And you don't have to wait.
And you don't have to wait. You don't have to, like, it is work, because you have to break down all of those toxic ideas in your mind.
But it's so much better to devote the energy to that concept than to chasing something that isn't really achievable for most of us anyway. It's like you're chasing a dead end versus
we have
just
limited
right
time.
now. Yeah.
Like you could spend your whole life chasing that thing and not ever get there, and then wake up one day and realize, oh, this is my last day on earth and I never ever took the time to stop and love myself. We don't have unlimited time, and like what a horrible thing to miss out on, experiencing loving yourself.
Yeah, and it's like I know that there is this idea that there's like, people think that there's like the perfect version of themselves. Like, this is my best self is when I'm this size, or I've had people tell me before, like, I know that like when I like lose this amount of weight, that's when I will be like my best, best version of myself. And I always find myself thinking, and it's like, but that version doesn't exist yet. And you are here right now in this moment. Like, this can be the best version of yourself. Like,
because the bar's just going to keep moving, people.
Because the bar's just going to keep moving.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I feel like that is an amazing note to end on. Just this idea of you don't have to wait. Buy the crop top. Get the tattoo you want. Just love yourself today. And the reality is, if you can't today, we kind of are saying you probably won't be able to when you maybe meet that standard. So time is precious, and don't wait. And I love that message, and I hope that we can all lean into that a little bit more every day. So thank you so much, Kayson. I hope you can come back and visit us again. We love having you here.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
And we'll catch everybody next week. Have a great week, everyone.